Welcome, everybody, to another Pathfinder episode. My name is Tommy Soares. I'm Assistant Director of the Purdue Institute of Inflammation, Immunology and Infectious Disease. And today I have the pleasure of welcoming Sarah Chapman, who is the Senior Assistant Director of the Imaging Facility at the University of Notre Dame. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us, Sarah.
Thank you.
It's so good to have you on the program, and I've been wanting to speak to you first because I'm doing this segment to show people what it takes and what's it like to work in a core facility as a scientist, as a manager, as, what does it take? And what are the different types of core facilities that we're talking about here? So I've profiled some on mass spectrometry and sequencing facilities, and I was just intrigued to talk to somebody in an imaging facility like yours to explain to our viewers a little bit what that's like. And perhaps we could go back and you can tell us a little bit about your background too, because it is a route that I think several people that are watching this program regularly have considered. And I'll let you tell the story, but I'll just give a little preamble. You did a BSc, and then you got your MBA, and you've combined these two now to lead this core facility. And I can't wait to hear a little bit of your story. So please take us back as far as you want to take us, and let's get going.
Okay, great. Well, I have to start with saying I started at Purdue, and even though I'm at the University of Notre Dame, my heart and love still belongs with Purdue. Those ties run very deep. But I came to Purdue with the thought that I wanted to become a veterinarian. And I started on that track and those courses, and it wasn't until my third year into the program. So I was on the animal science track, and I took a genetics course with Dr. Jeff Stewart, who's in the entomology department. I believe he's still at Purdue. I don't know if he would remember me or not, but I took his class and I was like a kid in a candy store. I just loved it. I absorbed it and I got excited about it, and I started to think maybe research was maybe where I wanted to go. So I went to his lab and begged for a job as an undergrad. And at the time he said, no, I don't have the capacity. I don't have the funding. I don't have a project that I can assign you to. And so I'm proud to say that I begged and said, I will wash the dishes. I will make 70% buffers, whatever you need me to do. I just want to be a part of the lab. And so he gave me a chance, and I started doing much of those things in his lab. And then the summer came, and I wanted to continue to work in the lab, and he was working on a project with the Hessian fly, which is similar to a Drosophila, very small, fruit fly, and they lay their eggs in wheat plants, and they had become resistant to pesticides, and it was stunting the growth of the wheat plants. And so what his group was doing was taking the larvae of these very small flies and dissecting the salivary glands and looking at the DNA inside these for two specific things. And so I remember the start of that summer, he taught me how to collect these microscopic, tiny little larvae. And I remember him saying, if you have to sit at the microscope for a couple hours and then take a break and go for a walk, it's okay. Come back, don't get discouraged. This is really hard. It's very challenging. Not very many people can do it. But I was very determined and enthusiastic, and I think it was within that first hour I had made a slide, and I went running to his office, and I found the salivary glands of the larva, and I did. And so I spent an entire summer making slide after slide for all of his group, dissecting the salivary glands of these larvae. But I spent a lot of time with the graduate students, learning their projects. I didn't get one of my own, but I just learned the different benchtop experiments and techniques. And I really, then I decided that's what I wanted to do, was research. But I paid for most of my college with financial aid. And so when it came time for graduation, I knew that I wanted to continue my education, but I was very far in debt. And taking out more loans to go to grad school and continue to just go further and further into debt didn't sit well with me. So I drug my feet a little bit, but during that time, there was a group at the University of Notre Dame, and they were looking for someone that could primarily do their mouse surgeries. And they saw on my resume that I was dissecting these salivary glands out of tiny larvae. So if I can do that, surely I could work under a microscope with mice. And they contacted me, which I'm from Indiana. I've lived in Indiana my whole life. And so Notre Dame calling me felt like a pretty awesome opportunity. And some of my Purdue professors said, no, you should consider other aspects, but I actually ended up taking that position, and I started off just as a technician. And I felt very privileged to be where I was at and in that lab and doing that work, but I still had a desire to continue my education and to continue to learn. But I will tell you that when I first started and people asked, what do you do? I gladly said that I was a surgeon. And then their faces were like, oh, okay, great. Well, what kind of surgery? And I would say mouse surgery. And my husband quickly said, please stop telling people that. Oh, but then so I changed my story to, what do you do? And I would say research, and they would say, what type of research? And that was really what encouraged me to take it out of just that one tool, that one technique. And so I was very fortunate to work with a PI who never said no. I always asked, can I learn more? Can I go upstairs and learn all of the different assays and all of the different techniques? And he always said yes. So I worked alongside some phenomenal scientists and graduate students. And within 2 years, I knew I really wanted to go back to school. And so I was lucky enough through Notre Dame to be able to take graduate classes. And I thought, even if it takes me longer than the typical graduate student, I will do it. However long it takes, I will earn my degree and continue my education. And so that's the path I was on. And my husband and I got married. And within 6 months of us becoming married, I became pregnant, which was not exactly the plan. But I thought, no problem. I can work and go to classes and become a mom. Other people do it. Sure, I can do that as well. And I was doing okay for a short time, but there is a professor here at our university, and he teaches organic chemistry at the graduate level, and he tends to be known for the make or break. So you determine very quickly in his class whether or not you have what it takes to continue to be a graduate student, or maybe you decide it's not for you. But I had that determination, and I was going to do well. So I was at his office every office hours. He offered and asked questions and really was pushing myself as hard as I possibly could push myself. And he had a very frank conversation with me, and I was doing well and managing.
Yeah.
But he said, eventually, Sarah, something has to give. You can't work full time, be a student full time, be really committed to your studies and become a new mother. It's a lot. And that was hard for me to hear at that time. But obviously, my education had to be put on hold. And so that's what I did. I continued working full time, still learning everything I could possibly absorb. I did in the lab. Was able to be on a few publications and still finding success, but not at the pace or the direction that I thought that I wanted to be moving. So then we had 2 children, and I I thought, okay, now they're sleeping through the night, so that at the age of 3, maybe it's a good time now to go back to school. But at that time, I wasn't sure that I wanted to have my own research program. I wasn't sure if having and running my own lab was exactly what I wanted. I love everything about academia, so I wasn't sure that I really wanted to move to industry. But there was a gap that I always was running into. We had, at that time, we also had started the core facilities, which are these fee-for-service facilities that provide tools and techniques to investigators, not only within our own university, but within neighboring academic universities and even in industry. And that business aspect, that business conversation seemed to be lacking. We could speak the science and really get into the details of the science, but learning how to market our core facility, how to operate, working with a budget and inventory and finances, all of those things seem to be a disconnect. So that's when I decided that business is really, I wanted to continue science, but I needed to gain some critical business skills. So I earned my master's in business. And I then moved my way up. I was the lab manager for a PI and also a program director for one of our core facilities, and did well in that position. At one time, I had around 14 different people that were reporting to me, graduate students, undergraduate, a series of instruments, as well as customers, internal and external to the university. And then, you know, I more opportunities, more conversations were happening, more opportunities were arising, and our vice president of research, I'll never forget it. He invited me over to his office. It's the one and only time I've actually had a one-on-one there. I was terrified. But he said, you know, Sarah, we recognize that you are a good manager, that you can manage equipment and manage a lab and manage people, but we're really interested to see if you have what it takes to be a leader. And so I heard that request. I took that challenge, and I took an entire year in that role as a manager to learn what it meant to be a leader, the differences between leaders and managers. I think during that year is the first time that I met you, and I just was given so many nuggets of information and so many good pieces of advice that since that day I've continued to develop myself as a leader. And I'm sure that that's the path that I'm on now, and that I'm on the right path. And I still do operations. I still am at the bench, but I also am in charge of making some critical decisions and influential over the success of our core.
That's phenomenal. It's so great to hear you tell the whole story as if it just happened like that. And I know, my gosh, what an adventure and what a journey to go through. Thank you also for sharing personal side of things too that made you go in certain directions, made you decide certain things? Because I think, it's important for all of us to hear those stories, and we go through them as well, right? And it's important to be able to share. I am fascinated by this, like, you got the call from Notre Dame and they like come work with us, and tell us a little bit about that. Like, the emotions must have been like flying through the roof, eh?
They were. They were. I really I was torn um a little bit because I think that I could have potentially had some different opportunities that I didn't even explore. I just really, that was the only conversation or the only interview that I had. And it might have just been one of those gut decisions where it just I have to do this.
Yes.
I have to. I
Yeah.
can't question it. I can't think about it. I can't consider anything else. I mean, I have to go.
Yeah.
Um,
It's, what's incredible is being able to, be given that opportunity, but then your tenacity to say, you know what, yep, let's go. And making that decision, even though maybe there were a few people saying, no, 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 there are other alternative options and things that you should think about. Um, Having that courage, where did you find that courage, and what did you think were the elements that really got them to call you? I mean, yes, you were doing microscopy, you were doing work with Jeff Stewart and so on, and you were okay, like, I mean, from surgery in mice to removing salivary glands and stuff like that. I mean, that's a big leap there. And so how did they hear from you? Were you publishing a lot with Jeff, or were you presenting, or how did they hear from you? Do you remember?
I don't remember all of the details, but I know that my final year at Purdue, um, I found the courage to really connect with my professors, not just Dr. Stewart. I worked with another professor, and his name is escaping me. And what I had to do in his lab was go out to the chicken farm and collect blood samples. And so he was doing blood work. And I didn't really enjoy that job. But uh, I worked with him for a short time. And the professor that I first worked with at Notre Dame was also studying the blood coagulation pathway. So
Mm.
there was a connection there. I didn't have high level experience in that Purdue professors, and I wasn't there for a long time. And I'm so disappointed in myself that I cannot think of his name. When we get off the call, I'll remember, or maybe later.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I spent a lot of time talking with all of my professors that my last year at Purdue. I felt like I was picking their brains, and I wanted to know what it took really. I thought at that time getting into research meant my option was I would become a research professor. I was that naive and thought, well, I need to figure out how they became a research professor so that I can become a research professor. Um, and so I think that it had to have been a connection with the Purdue faculty member, one of them,
Yeah.
and the Notre Dame faculty, and the partnership that Notre Dame has always had with Purdue. Um,
Yeah, that's great. And again, you never know when these opportunities are going to show up at your doorstep. and that you know there, what was it that I heard? I think it was a Louis Pasteur reference, which was you better be prepared for when chance shows up at your doorstep like that, right? And this is great. So you honed in on your micro tweezer hand-eye coordination and living in the microscope and being able to know how to use them inside and out. So now you're doing mice surgery. How was that? Was that like you're learning a new technique, you're working with living things, even though you were working with, living things before, but I'm sure when you were dissecting salivary glands, they were dead by that point in time. But like, how was that transition? Was that somewhat scary? Do you remember your first few days at Notre Dame when you started and you're like, okay, what am I doing?
Yes, I do remember. And I still use the phrase that was said to me when I'm teaching new students to work with mice. Remember, you are a lot bigger than they are. So, but I don't know. I don't really remember feeling scared as much as I was excited because I felt like, okay, I'm still, when I came to Purdue, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I knew I wanted to work with animals. I had that draw. I had that desire and that passion to work with animals. And, it's a little bit different when you're working with a mouse, but I was so excited that it was the first time that I felt like I was bonding those two areas. I was working the research and I was working with animals. So I was just I was hungry. I was hungry for information and anything that I could learn. And I had very talented and good people to learn from, and so I was just taking everything I could.
You know what's and I think that was what impressed me a lot about when you were telling your story is just that piece that you just said. It's you seem to be not only curious about what are your own talents, but talking and talking with profs, and you saw, oh, any new technique that you can show me, anything that I can be exposed to. So it's almost like you were hungry for exposure. You were hungry to really get to see what's the breath. And then you also said, oh, I was also curious as to what does it take to succeed? And I mean, can you take us back a little bit to that time as you were discovering so many techniques, talking to so many different people? And it sounds like you are a phenomenal receptacle, for lack of a better term, for mentorship. Like you've retained a lot of mentorship because as you were talking, there were so many good little bits of suggestions and teachings that came across.
Well, I think it's important for me to say that in the beginning, when I was at Purdue, obviously, it was easy for me to talk with my teachers, my professors. But in the beginning, when I first started at Notre Dame, I wasn't going to the faculty. I was going to the other graduate students. I was a bit terrified to speak with the faculty and learn from them. So it started it started simply just learning from my peers and from the other students. And it really wasn't until I had that challenge from our vice president of research to understand the difference between management and leadership that I stayed in that box for a long time. And it took a lot for me to get out of that box and start talking to um, more of our faculty and more of the experts in the field. Um, And there were some pivotal moments. One I think I can share. I was doing a listening tour and I visited Purdue and I met with you. And I remember that trip just because it was so easy. It was and everyone at Purdue was so welcoming. Um, but I remember being very nervous, being scared, and I remember we went to a sushi restaurant, and I was like, "Oh, I have a connection. He likes sushi. I like sushi. This is, you're a person. I'm a person. We're this. I can do this. I can have these conversations." And I remember going to someone who is very well known on our campus at the university, and um, I remember preparing for this conversation. It was just a listening tour that I was doing and being so nervous and so scared. And at the last minute, he had to cancel because his father was sick. And I remember feeling, wow, I'm so nervous about this conversation that I forgot that he has a father and that he goes through so many of the same things. And so I had to kind of talk myself off of that ledge and remove those barriers. I put up barriers that I could only communicate to students for so long. And I was so afraid to speak to anyone in a leadership position or faculty. So that was, I have to say that was a pivotal point in my career. And
So, okay, but I think that's very important, and I think we need to maybe go at that a little bit. I I don't know if did you want to say any more about the techniques that you learned from your peers? And I know you restricted yourself to talk to only grad students, but you were learning a lot of techniques from the different grad students. Were you helping them out and they were helping you out, like you guys would like barter and trade techniques, or how did that work?
well, we did. It was a little bit of trading techniques. It was a lot of me shadowing. Um,
Okay.
uh, and then near the end of that lab, before I moved to the core facility, um, my professor or the PI, the principal investigator that I was working with, he started challenging me to learn things that incorporate new tools and techniques that no one was doing in our group.
Okay.
So it was a combination of learning
So,
from others, learning on my own.
and did you find that aspect easy or difficult? Was that, again, you when you spoke about it, you were talking with much excitement about that time because you were like a sponge, absorbing from so many different people, and I can just imagine how exciting that must have been.
It was exciting, but it's still something that I actively am doing, and it is challenging. It's hard. Um, you know, one of the pieces of advice that I got from my director right now was you need to have the stamina of a horse and the skin of an elephant. And we have had many conversations because I had to fail repeatedly. And I always felt first that I did something wrong, that I'm not capable of doing this, or maybe I'm not smart enough, or um, that, and so, but that's just science. You have to just keep trying. You have to just keep going. So there were definitely times where I thought, I'm biting off more than I can chew here. I need to just stick with what I know and just do what I know. Um, but I'm not, that's not me. I, but there were several times where I was like, okay, I should settle down.
Yes. stick with a few techniques and that's
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
But what I mean, that it again, it shows your courage, right? It shows your courage not only in tackling new things, but having the confidence now looking back and saying, well, maybe all those anxieties that I was feeling were because of me and not, as you said, it wasn't the science, it was me. We're all human and we all go through those feelings of uh, anxiety and feelings like well, am I not good enough? Are all these people smarter than me? Is my PhD not worth it? Or is my degree not as good as it, right? And like, so am I not good enough to understand these things? But as you said, you just have to continue working through it, and eventually things do become clearer, and they open up, or at least you become more receptive and you open up and you say, oh, I think now I understand. But it's almost like it's techniques, it's instrumentation and technology, it's data, it's IT. And I think I want to come back to this pivotal moment with your vice president for research, and in that you're accumulating all this science, but then there's this personal aspect, this more soft skill aspect, which is, are you going to stay as a manager, or are you going to now take the responsibility of learning how to become a leader? And the self-reflection. What happened? What were you thinking when they were telling you this thing, and when you went home that night and you were like, oh geez, what does that, like, what do I have to do? What does that mean? Tell us a little bit, Sarah, if you can.
That's exactly what I was thinking because, in my mind, I thought, I'm managing all of these people. I'm already a leader. You know what? I didn't, I don't think that I fully appreciated the differences between a manager and a leader. And I can't tell you the number of conversations that I had within that year. Um, but I really was given the time to carve out to go across our campus, outside of maybe even the research realm, and even to Purdue. They allowed me to come to Purdue and talk to some of the core facility directors there and some of the leadership team there. And it so much happened within that year, um, that really changed the way that I saw things, and the way that I saw myself as well. And I had to make some decisions on, is this something I'm capable of, and is this something that I want to pursue, or should I just keep doing what I know I'm good
Yes. Yes. And so it was almost like a challenge for yourself. Is that what you mean? Like, it's easy to stay in your comfort zone doing what you're doing and not seek this out as a challenge, as a new challenge?
at? Yeah, yes, yeah. Um, that was what I was trying to determine. Um, what would I have to change about my daily operations, or even how I thought, my thought processes,
Yeah. Yeah.
to make that happen.
And so tell me something, or if you can, what what was the shift? What was the, and I know there's probably several brain shifts, mind shifts, perspectives, and so on. But it seems to me like when you were a manager, you were helping a lot of people with managing their projects and telling them, okay, so you're going to do this, and then we're going to meet then, and you're going to tell me about this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to, right? What was the change now to start thinking as a leader? And I say start thinking as a leader and not start doing as a leader, because I know first we need to think, and then our bodies follow our minds. But so tell us a little bit about what was that shift?
Well, I remember a very good mentor. She was my mentor for several years, and she's still at Vanderbilt. And she said, you need to walk away from the checklist. It, you being a leader, it's not about making a list of tasks and checking them off. Check, but I love that. I mean, doesn't everybody love that? But it's more about appreciating the process. So I started when I was working with the students, or when I was working with labs, I started thinking more about not the task at hand, not what do we need to accomplish, you know, where's our start, where's our end, where's our checkpoints, but rather what else, which direction can we go from here? What else can we get? How much bigger can we build this? Or who else could use this information? How is this purposeful in another application? And so then I really started building a network. Really, I felt like a mama spider, you know, just web, 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 web. And that thinking and that process of just seeing the different connections in a different way, that that just changed things.
Awesome. That is so good. And do you remember if it was a moment where you decided, like, was it shortly after that meeting where you decided, you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to start trying to do. This is how I'm going to carve out my day so that I can start focusing a little bit more on these new perspectives. Well, how did that come about?
So, actually, this is fresh on my plate right now. In 2018, I was asked to create a vision plan for 2025. And so I I had a few examples from different groups in the university, but this was my big task, my big responsibility was to create this vision plan. And and there were mile markers within that vision plan, but that really but I can tell you, you know, it was Vision Plan 2025, and I'm renewing it right now because most of those things that we set out to do, we've accomplished most of those, and now we're looking at the future again. You know, now it's the vision of 2029,
Yeah,
and so
great. That's fantastic. And so are you going to, because you accomplish all these goals, are you going to pick loftier goals for 2029 now? Like, are you going to be like, okay, well, we accomplished all of this stuff here. We're pretty good. Can we be better? Right?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah, yes. Everything's bigger, bolder, better, um,
great.
more challenging,
Yes.
harder, you know. Um,
So, Sarah, there is this point, though, in your story that you say, hey, I went and I saw and I talked to all these people. And then you also saw this need, not only in maybe a better way of operating the facility, but more knowledge to empower yourself with how to be a better manager, a better business manager, for lack of a better term, in the operation of the facility. So let's make sure that the audience here understands that in a core facility, there are, like, you run an imaging core facility. So there's all kinds of microscopy instruments and imaging instruments too that you need to know something about, how to maintain them, how to operate them, how to train people to use them, so on and so forth. But these are heavy, expensive pieces of equipment that require a business mindset to, like, maintain and operate, because they require a bunch of maintenance, a bunch of income to continue to operate. You're working under a university facility, where you, because of certain policies and the way things happen, and some of the way that the dollars that are used to spend in your facility, you can only charge so much. You can't make a profit if you're a non-for-profit institution. There's so many factors here that I think, people who are listening and want to know, well, I do microscopy. I'm the best at it. I think I could go run a core facility. But here you're saying, wait a minute, time out. Yes, the science is super important, but you need to have more of this managerial type of techniques under your belt too, experience and knowledge. Tell us a little bit about what was that discovery like, and what are some of these elements that you think through your MBA you're implementing to make that facility better, more efficient?
Well, the biggest word that we use is sustainability. How can we be sustainable? How can we continue um, not only to operate as a business, we also want to avoid the plateau. We we want to somehow increase and expand our business model and our capabilities and what we can offer to our faculty. So that is where I think some of my business knowledge and my business skills is the most crucial. I rely on the faculty and our researchers to really help guide and steer our decisions into what tools we need. They know what they need. It's not always my responsibility to say, hey, you should get this, or you would um it's really uh if we were to purchase this instrument that the faculty say that they need, and that would benefit, how can we sustain that? What are the factors that are part of that? Who would use it? How many would use it? What impact? What is the intention? Is it something that we can take beyond our small campus community? Is it something that we can offer to others? And some of those decisions are extremely challenging, especially working with a faculty who they need everything. They want everything, and I want to give them everything. You know, um, but having a business sense and to make those really critical, challenging decisions, and to unfortunately have to do a little bit of pushback and say, okay, I'm not saying no, I'm just saying not yet, or we need to think this through. We need to find, where's the funding coming from, and all of um, these other decisions. So I think in my role now and I'm associate director. I haven't changed my email line, but
Okay.
so I've moved up one ladder, the associate director. Um, I still am very involved in the science. I'm still very involved in the research. Um, but I have to think more in terms of business, to make the science and the research better.
Yeah, and I think the way you were explaining it though, it seems like your thought process to do that is not dictated so much by the science, but as also taking into account all the other projects, right? Because you're an integrated imaging facility. Tell us a little bit about what are the imaging modalities that are available in your facility that you have to balance out.
So we are integrated in several different ways, and we are unique to the university because we're actually four cores under one umbrella. So we have a histology core, in vivo imaging core, optical microscopy core, and electron microscopy core, all underneath the integrated
Yeah.
imaging umbrella. So we work with 9 different departments. I have almost 100 different faculty and some external customers as well. Um, so we're really embedded into a variety of different types of fields of research.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I don't venture to say that we specialize in just one area of research. We have our fingers on so many different types of research.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think maybe that's why it's such a challenge in an academic institution to lead a core facility like that, that has so much opportunity and resources for so many different people. I mean, think of every science that would require at least one of those imaging modalities that you've spoken about, and what a feat to balance that out as you're going through, as you were talking and you were saying, yeah, when we was thinking about purchasing an equipment or not, we're thinking about who else could use it, what other applications, so on. And I'm thinking, oh, you're just like an airline. You when you purchase a plane, you're like, well, we got to be able to go this place. This is our bread and butter place, but we might want to also have a route that goes another place, or so that whole complexity definitely adds a lot of excitement into the planning and the strategy, right? As you guys grow. But Sarah, tell me, what's your favorite part so far of running the facility? Because you've said so much that I think I could guess, but it would only be my guess, and I would want to hear it from your own words. What do you love doing the most out of your day to day, and what's exciting about working in a place like that?
Well, if I could only use one word, which you didn't say I only had to use one word,
Yeah.
but if I did only have to use one word, it would be the partnerships. Because I think that's really what it takes. When someone looks at my day-to-day activities, how I spend my time, I'm I'm partnering with so many different people across our campus. I'm working with the faculty and helping to understand their research and helping to find the needs and where we can expand and really grow their efforts. I'm partnering with the students, and I love working with the students and the when they learn something new that they might have thought was not possible. Those things. But I'm also partnering with all of our administrators and our executive leadership. And, when we get in a room and we talk about strategic planning, um, I don't have any authority over any of those high level decisions that are being made across the campus, but I can partner with them and try to understand their vision and figure out where we might fit, what path, or, even communications, or, our finance and accounting. That is my favorite part, is just having the ability to walk alongside people. I I feel that I have a different type of leadership, but it's not one where it's like, get in a line, everybody follow me, I know what to do. that's not me. Um, I would, sometimes I might walk in front, but sometimes I might walk to the side. Sometimes I'm walking behind it, but always together. It's that let's let's keep moving forward together. And sometimes it's a snail pace, and sometimes it's straight to the top. But it's those partnerships that really every day make it great.
And it's so good to hear you say that, because I really think that that's the success that's required throughout, right? A lot of partnerships, a lot of good communication. um you start talking a little bit about this period of time where you did get the courage, and you start talking more to the leaders, and you start talking, and you did your listening tour, and so on and so forth. Did that also change the way that you approach these partnerships? Are you more forward, meaning like you wouldn't be so hesitant to reach out and be like, hey, let's have a conversation about this. I think we're interested in this, or whatever it might be.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's fair to say that I don't know if you remember what you told me, but I remember what you told me when I came to Purdue. You said a part of being a leader isn't just about making decisions, it's seeing those decisions through. And so when I am encountering someone that I might be a little nervous to talk to, maybe they're a high level, I walk into the room and think, I don't have to make this decision. It's not up to me. This is not necessarily my responsibility. There are times where I do have to make the decision. It's my responsibility. But part of my role in that leadership effort is to take the decision that that person has made and help to shepherd it through or move it along, and I can I can be a leader by being a part of the process. So that I think takes a lot of the pressure off of me, where I'm comfortable making decisions, um, and I don't shy away from it as much as I would have maybe 10 years ago. Um, but I also recognize that lots of decisions that happen at a university are not up to me.
Fair enough, fair enough. And that's a good way to put it. You also were speaking before about, what you learned from some of these failures along the way. And, you know, I think when we spoke, if I recall a little bit from that afternoon, we also spoke about being able to have confidence in the decision, knowing that you're going to learn something from that, whether it's a good decision or a bad decision. And that's why I'm talking about these failures, of how much we really learn from a failure and a bad decision versus a good decision where you just go, oh, pat yourself in the back, you did a great job, that was awesome, and all right, you keep going along. But it's really those times where you're like, oh, well, maybe I should not have said that, I should not have done that, I decided the wrong way. Is that something that you think has been able to help you make more decisions more confidently?
Absolutely. Absolutely. On our campus, we talk about with the students that we've worked to create this culture of excellence, and I think we've done an excellent job of doing that. But we've put so much stress on that excellence that our students, our staff, our faculty, there is a sense of fear of failure. It's like so much is riding on this decision. I don't even want to make the decision because what if I fail? What if it goes wrong? Um, and so we're working as an entire university to do a culture shift where we're actually encouraging and not encouraging, but providing an environment where it's okay to fail because there's opportunity there. And there have been several times in my career, nothing that I can think of off the top of my head that's been monumental, because I'm still here. But there have been times where someone has said, you shouldn't have done that, or you shouldn't have said that. And that feedback is hard to take at first, but I've always had an opportunity to really dig deep into it and understand why, and the implications, and learn and grow from it, and hope that I don't do it again. But I think each one of those failures has helped me to get a little braver, to get a little smarter. You know,
I thank you for saying that, because I hope people really hear that out as a way that we should all be, meaning, be accepting of our own humanity, right? We're all human. We're not knowing everything. We don't know it all. We're trying our best. As long as you keep trying your best and you keep, questioning your decisions, because they're not always all good decisions, right? And you measure those and make sure that, but once you hit it, once you made the decision, go with it and make sure you learn everything that you can from that direction. It's so important. You said something that might also be poignant, in that we're talking about making lists, and who needs all these lists? But as a leader, shouldn't we be in this strategic plan? Aren't we really listing what we're planning, what our goals are going to be in the next few years? And so maybe the list is not, what am I going to be doing hour by hour today? But maybe the list is more forward looking, and that continuing to make lists is a good thing. I'm with you, Sarah.
yeah.
I love lists. It feels so good to check them off. And I don't know what your techniques are, but do you do lists daily and like weekly, monthly? How do you tackle those?
Well, I'm not sitting outside my office, but if I could turn my computer, I have a huge whiteboard, and it's my public list, really. And that's what I'm focusing on throughout the year. And then I get an opportunity to look at it, um, and it reminds me of areas that maybe I've forgotten, or I've neglected, or priorities. And I'm the only one that knows. I mean, everyone can see my list there. Um, but I don't necessarily do a daily list, because my day-to-day operations are so different every day. It's not the same routine every day. But I always have maybe a progress line. We talked about the process and enjoying the process,
Yeah.
and so I know, you know, some key things that have to happen for me to get to this point, and when needed, absolutely, I am keeping a list, and
Awesome. Awesome. It's a great technique, isn't it?
yes.
And I think what also helps us is to do that reflection. As you said, oh, I love ticking things off my list, but you don't know if if you should or not until you go back and you think, that I complete the task? And when you do complete that task, how good you feel, even if it's a small task, you completed it. And so that helps you, give you a boost for, okay, let's go on to the next task and the next task. Wonderful, wonderful advice, Sarah. Thank you so much. Anything else that you want to share with us?
I just wanted to say, I think it's about momentum. That's what I always think about on a daily, you know, constant movement. And sometimes you have to go backwards. You have to take a step back and retrace your steps, and what did I miss, or what did I not see? So going backwards isn't a bad thing. I think that as long as we're not stagnant, I don't like that. that bothers me. I want to have momentum in some direction, sideways, forward, backwards. I think as long as I keep that on my mind every day, did I have momentum of some kind? Then check, it's a great day.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, you certainly built the momentum here. I hope that people are really going to tune in and get energized by the words that you've shared with us. Sarah Chapman, Associate Director of the Integrated Imaging Facility at the University of Notre Dame. Thank you so much. A beautiful South Bend, Indiana, I should say. We're highlighting all of these great opportunities in Indiana. So thank you so much for being on Pathfinder today and for building our momentum in this area.
All right. Thank you, Tommy, and boiler up.
Yes, all the best.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Hammer down. Hammer down.
Yes, hammer down. That's right.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.